It's the Brad and John Show.
And that dead air is brought to you by myself. I'll own up to it. Okay, today is April 15th. As John said, it's tax day today, and it is a Tuesday. This is the B block, which means we start at about 7 o'clock. Okay, no, but it's about 7:20. John, first off, some of my research I've done. I called someone, and I cannot attribute this to a particular person, but because of the fact that it involves financial information, and they asked me not to attribute it to them, but just in general. I was curious as to if this guy who was in the financial services industry's phone was ringing off the hook with all the stock market gyrations, and he told me no. In fact, most of his clients are in it for the long haul, and they sort of realize that the market is volatile. There's ups and downs and things like that. And he said, if anything, the calls he was getting were people saying, do you think there's a spot where I can buy in more at one of the dips? Right, John? You know how that works, right?
Yeah, I think a lot of people probably, and we could call them macro tourists, Brad. So they see headlines and they get worried and they have anxiety and they think, ooh, this would be a good time to buy the dip.
Well, the idea being that I think it was interesting because from what he said, it wasn't the panic that's sort of been portrayed by the media. Oh my God, people are losing their 401ks. They're crash and burn. And according to him, and this is not a guy who specializes in dealing with the Huntley Ledoux crowd. This is, average.
Yeah, this is a storefront type guy, right?
Average,
like you could walk in and sit down and he'll show you a pie chart.
Right. Average investor who is just essentially trying to, make a future for their kids with college and retirement and stuff like that. So I thought that was sort of interesting. Okay. Second off, I got my whole list of stuff here. Do you want to hold off on the KDA checks thing to the C block? You want to do that?
We can. Yeah. I imagine you'll have a whole lot of opinions on it, Brad. And weren't we going to broadcast live from the Royale when we discussed that, Brad? Or were we going to go to a back room at some key manufacturing, some hardware store back room?
John, this is how small business gets things done. Okay, now, John makes fun of me for driving down to Jefferson City. And for those of you who have heard me talk about this, when I get my license plates renewed, I drive to Jefferson City. Because, yes, it's an hour and 45 minutes down, hour 45 minutes back, but I'm only in there for like a short period of time. Last month, I drove down to Jefferson City to A, pick up my new personalized license plates, and B, get my real ID. I was in and out with both tasks in under 20 minutes. I think I spent 5 minutes getting my license plates, 15 minutes getting my real ID. Okay, there was no line either place. I walked in, got my license plates. I literally my butt was on the chair for, I'm telling you, like maybe 5 seconds. My number gets called. Go out to the thing. Bang, the guy knocked it out. I said, where do I go for my driver's license? He says, those elevators, take it up to the next floor, get off, and you're right there. So sure enough, I got in the elevator, walked out the door of the elevator on the next floor, 4th floor, I believe, walked in, got my real ID. There are people talking about this that are spending hours at the DOR offices trying to get their real IDs because the cutoff is next month? Was it May 5th or something like that?
Yeah, it's early May, maybe the 7th, something like that, 5th or 7th, yeah.
And that is the date when if you try to get on the Big Bird out of Lambert, if you don't have a real ID, they essentially said, so sorry, come back when you have a real ID or bring your passport. So, and then there's national stories about this because this is a national deadline. They've kicked the can down the road for years and years and years. They said, well, the deadline's next year. And then the next year would come, well, we're going to make it another year. Well, they ain't making another year. And there's stories about people who are like waiting in line for hours. And then there's some states that only do appointments only. But when you go on the website and you've tried to get an appointment, there are no appointments available. I find this fascinating because this whole goofy thing, the difference between my regular driver's license, my crazy story, I had a real ID several years ago. I lost my wallet. It's never shown up. I have no idea what happened to it. I know it's not some place where somebody picked it up because I had credit cards in there. None of the credit cards have ever been used. Matter of fact, I never even canceled any of the credit cards. So if someone has it, maybe they threw it away or it's down a sewer or something like that. But when I went back to get my real ID replacement, I was informed that I have to have all my documents back over again. I can't, even though they have them in the system. So this whole real ID thing, if you look at my regular driver's license and my new real ID, the only difference on it is it says real ID. John, what's the difference? Do you know?
I don't know, other than it's a great way for the government to control us and have another document to tell us what we can and cannot do. I don't know the difference, Brad.
I just don't get it. I don't get it. And the whole crazy thing about this is this is all from 9/11. It traces its roots back to 9/11. And I've heard experts talk about this. They say, who was the advisor for Obama that said, what was it, one of the boys from Chicago? He said, "Don't ever let a disaster go to waste," or what
A
was
crisis go, yeah,
crisis
and
go
it's
to
either attributed to Hillary Clinton from the 90s or Rahm Emanuel.
Right,
from
Rahm
the
Emanuel,
2000s.
who was one of the advisors to Obama and eventually became the mayor of Chicago. And by the way, a lot of people didn't like him as the mayor of Chicago. I bet a lot of people in Chicago wish he'd come back because things were a lot better under Rahm Emanuel than they are the current mayor, which is interesting because of the fact that when Tashara Jones was worried that she wasn't going to win the election, she brought in the mayor of Chicago to help her get more votes. And the mayor of Chicago has 6%, was it 6% approval rating in Chicago now? So, you know, if you
Yeah. Maybe the mayor of Chicago was just brought in because Tashara knows and likes people in Chicago, and it would be a favor. And I don't know. I mean, it certainly didn't win her any votes, right?
Yes. Okay.
Anyway, I got you off track, Brad, by mentioning Chicago or something.
Well,
so let's get back to the original Real ID point.
To me, it's just ridiculous. The whole thing's stupid. You know, to the point where unless I'm missing something, if I show you my 2 driver's licenses, and I still have my old one, they didn't take it. If I showed you my old one and my new one, the picture's a little bit different and the marking's a little bit different. I don't get it. I mean, I don't understand. I mean, what makes that supposedly better than my old driver's license? I mean, I've told this story before about once upon a time, I had a post office box, which I still have. After the 9/11 thing, I had a post office box. At that point in time, I had it for like 15 years. And one day I get a note in my post office box that says, "I have to provide identification to prove that's really me to retain my post office box." And I'm going like, okay, I've had it for 15 years, you know. So I go through this crazy thing where I have to go to the postmaster and I have to prove it's me. And the bizarre part of this is, at the time, I did not have any personal cars. I had company cars. And the postmaster saying, "Well, do you have this? Do you have that?" I go, none of the things she wanted I had. So finally she says, "Well, we need to prove it's you." And she says, "Go out in your car and get me your insurance card." And I go, "But it's a company car." And she says, "I don't care." So I got in my car and I get my insurance card, which is in a company name, does not have my name on it whatsoever, and she approves me. Okay, what did that prove? Oh, it just proved the fact that she's just checking the boxes. She didn't really care, to the point where it didn't prove that that's me, but yet I'm there every day checking my mail. Okay, on to news story. Story on STLPR. Effort to ban Native American mascots in Illinois would impact 11 metro area schools. Can we think of anything more important that the state of Illinois can do than this crap? I mean,
no, I think it's probably the most important because unless you've dealt with an angry midget, and don't get me started on those midgets that are Irish too. You know, they get drunk. You know, they let a little midget named Rudy. I've never seen that movie, but I think he was a little midget who got to play football. Like, yeah, I mean, I think on behalf of the midgets and Indians and other historically oppressed people, Brad, I don't think there's anything more important than this.
The proposed legislation, which passed in the Illinois House of Representatives on Thursday, that's last Thursday, 71-40, the vote would impact at least 11 Metro East schools. These include Mascoutah Indians, Collinsville Jayhawks, Cahokia High School Comanches, and Westside Junior High's Warriors. The bill has raised concern on the House floor and beyond about the best way to teach and preserve the state's Native American history, and if this can be done appropriately, then schools, mascots, and imagery. Now, it goes on to say that, I'm synopsizing here, that if you get approval from a tribe, you can use their name. And I'm going like, well, hold on a minute now. The interesting part of this is our federal government, specifically the Department of Defense, because I'm an ex-helicopter guy, do you know in the Army, all the helicopters have an Indian name? Did you know this, John?
Like the Apache?
The Apache. There's the Kiowa, which is the OH-58. There's the Blackhawk, which is the UH-60. How is it that the federal government can condemn this, but yet in their own Department of Defense, and remember, they renamed all these bases, which is interesting. Trump is putting them back to the original names. Did you know that story too?
I do, yeah. And before we weave too far from your original point, Brad, I guarantee you there is someone at the Department of Defense who is on a task force, who's in charge of a task force under at least Joe Biden to rename, and their job, his or her or their name, would be to rename all the offensive Native Americans and come up with new names. You know that the Biden administration was working on that. Well, like rename them Paleface, or you can't have any name Firewater, clearly, you know?
Okay, according to the article in STLPR, what would schools need to change? Names of federally recognized tribes and historical Native American people, mascots depicting Native Americans, imagery associated with Native Americans people such as feathered headdresses, tomahawks, and arrowheads, terms like redskins, braves, chiefs, chieftains, tribe, Indians, or any other synonymous term, logo, or mascot depicting Native Americans. I say once again, I'm a German. If some high school wanted to name themselves the Kraut Eaters, I would say, hey, more power to you, or the Wiener Schnitzel,
yeah.
the Wiener Schnitzels,
Hey, and I'm Irish. Name your team the Mix.
Right.
I won't be offended by it.
See, I don't get it. And what I find fascinating about this is corporate America is spending millions, probably collectively billions of dollars for naming rights, and they're giving this free to the Indians. They're giving it free to the Redskins.
I know.
Right. Okay.
Brad, by the way, when you started with this headline, I thought you were going to talk about the fact that they got to ban the team named the Midgets. I thought you were going in the midget direction, but you went straight on Tonto.
But the midget thing, you know the story behind that. What school is that? Is that Mascoutah or something like that?
Yeah, I think it's somewhere over there.
But the interesting part of that story is, do you know the background? I heard this just the other day.
No, I don't know.
Supposedly they had a team of a bunch, they weren't dwarfs or whatever you want to call them. They weren't little people. They had a team where like the tallest guy on the entire team was like 5'9" for whatever that was, but they were all real good. Who's the guy in the NBA guy who was like 5'8", 5'9"? Was that Spud Webb? Yeah, Spud Webb. Okay, who was an incredible basketball player. He was a midget among giants, so to speak. Okay, and the situation was this is what I heard. Maybe not true. They won a state championship, or they won their district championship or something against all odds. They were up against a bunch of teams that the smallest guy on their team was like 6'2". So they were sort of referred to as the midgets because they were the smallest collectively, height basketball team in the entire state, and yet they did very well. So they did it to sort of honor this team, and they called the team the Midgets. Well, you can't have that name anymore because that offends little people. And I guess to the point where there was all sorts of movie news that came out about Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, about the gal who was not Snow White. She was Mexican-American, whatever, and the dwarfs were...
Yeah, she looks kind of black, but she's actually just
right.
Mexican, I think.
And I don't think that picture did very well in the box office. Did it, John?
I don't think it did. And by the way, the team name is Freeburg High.
Freeburg High. The Freeburg Midgets. Okay. Once again, legislators, what you should be concerned about, and like we go back to the Friends of Francis Howell school board people, instead of putting out things that telling about how you've kicked bad books out of the library, you've done this, you've closed down, gender neutral bathrooms, teach the kids something. Teach them math. Teach them physics.
Teach them radio broadcasting.
Teach them radio broadcasting.
I heard that a guy met with John Beck and was trying to work with Missouri Broadcasters Association to do something to allow young people to own some radio stations. And John Beck said, for the good of the radio industry, I'm going to dedicate myself to helping young people and the radio industry. Isn't that how the meeting went, Brad?
No, exactly opposite of that, John.
Oh, okay.
Nothing happened. Okay. On my education rant, there's a story this morning about the government is going to withhold $2 billion worth of money to Harvard. Just last week, a couple of weeks ago, they're talking about they're going to withhold $400 million to Columbia. These are private institutions that all have huge endowments. Why the hell is the government giving them any money to begin with? Why, John? Tell me.
Well, I think it just goes back to the fact that these private institutions are helping they probably, Brad, have some programs for women and minorities So why wouldn't we have the government give a little bit of money to these private institutions when they're doing something for the greater good? Like Harvard certainly has a program where they give poor and minority kids a chance to come to campus. Like, why wouldn't you supplement Harvard with the same money that you would supplement, the University of Massachusetts or another public school?
John, you're a WashU graduate. Do you know off the top of your head what the current endowment for Washington University is? How many billion it is?
Yeah, $11 billion quadrillion dollars.
Okay. So, see, once again, I should stop saying this. There's a perfect example of why I get frustrated. It's like the guy that you meet who claims about, oh my God, I'm down to my last $10 million. I don't know what I'm going to do. I won't be able to renew my country club membership. And I ordered that second Ferrari, and I don't think it's going to come in because of the fact that, they're going to put a tariff on it. To me, this is like same thing. It's like these universities.
I know, and if you're Brad Hildebrand, you go to that guy with $10 million and you say, cool. At what public high school were you a gym teacher?
Right. Yes.
And then you bind and gag him and you force him to listen to an hour of damn Dave Ramsey, right, Brad? Brad, I'm so antsy about hearing the KDHX backroom key store story because I can't wait to hear what happens here.
John, just one more minute. Why in the world the government is giving billions of dollars? Supposedly the amount of that's due that the government has scheduled to pay Harvard is $8 billion. Okay, Mr. Doge, good old, Elon, get in there and blow that deal up. I mean, and
it seems pretty ridiculous, Brad.
Well, if you go around the country, that's Harvard. I bet you any money that if someone put together a number that says, okay, this is what the federal government gives the top 50 universities per year, I bet people be, OMG, what in the world are we doing? And once again, it's not like they're about ready to close the doors. It's not like they're Sanford Brown that, unless they have, 20 more students, they're going to shut the place down because Sanford Brown is a terrible for-profit educational institution. OMG, we can't have that. Do you mean a company that's actually going to profit from teaching people? Oh, we can't have that. That's just horrendous. But yet we have to have the not-profits like of the world who have tons of money and they waste our tax dollars because of the fact that that's just what they do. Right, John?
I think that you are a graduate of Mrs. Brown's typing secretarial school. What was the name of that place, Brad?
Miss Hickey's school.
Miss Hickey's, that's right.
It was Miss Hickey's secretarial school, which I think is gone as now as well, too. God, all these great institutions we've lost.
And you can remove your Miss Hickey's degree by taking the back of a hairbrush and rubbing it quickly on the skin. That removes Miss Hickey's degrees.
Okay. That was pretty good, John. I like that. Okay. We have to take a break.